For nearly 30 years, Hugh Jackman and Deborra-Lee Furness were one of Hollywood's most talked-about couples. Hugh spent years publicly praising his wife and calling their marriage one of the most important parts of his life. Then everything changed. Why did she wait so long to speak? What happened behind the scenes before their marriage ended? And why has Hugh's reported wedding plans affected her so deeply? Join us as we uncover the story behind Deborra's silence and the details she may finally be ready to reveal. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us until the end. The wedding news. For almost 30 years, Hugh Jackman and Deborra-Lee Furness were known as one of Hollywood's most lasting couples. Hugh regularly spoke about how much he loved his wife and how important she was to his life. Their marriage survived the pressures of fame, demanding careers, raising 2 children, and constant public attention. For years, Hugh's public comments made their relationship seem deeply secure. That is what made the events following their separation so difficult for many people to understand. Hugh and Deborra announced in September 2023 that they were separating after nearly 3 decades together. Their statement was carefully written and described the decision as part of a change in their journey and a desire to pursue individual growth. Neither of them publicly went into detail about what had happened inside their marriage. Deborra-Lee in particular stayed remarkably quiet. She did not launch a public campaign against Hugh. She did not give a series of interviews explaining her side. Even while newspapers, television programs, and entertainment websites continued discussing the breakup, she largely kept her private feelings to herself. That changed as Hugh's relationship with Sutton Foster became more public. Hugh and Sutton first worked together on the Broadway revival of The Music Man. Rehearsals began in 2022, and the production continued for almost a year. The 2 performers spent a huge amount of time together, appearing on stage nearly every night and doing interviews and promotional work together. During the production, reports began claiming that their relationship had become unusually close. Sutton also spoke publicly about the time she and Hugh spent together before performances. She described a routine in which they would talk and connect before going on stage. At the time, those comments did not necessarily mean what later reports suggested. But after Hugh and Deborra-Lee separated, details about Hugh and Sutton's relationship received much more attention. Sutton later filed for divorce from her husband Ted Griffin in October 2024. By January 2025, Hugh and Sutton were being photographed together publicly, making it increasingly difficult to describe their relationship as simply a friendship between former co-stars. Then came another major development. Hugh and Deborra-Lee's divorce was finalized in June 2025. Within months, reports began claiming that Hugh had proposed to Sutton during a New Year's vacation in Costa Rica. Other reports said Hugh had already been telling people close to him about the engagement. The reported speed of the developments appears to be what made the situation especially painful for Deborra-Lee. After spending almost 30 years married to Hugh, she was suddenly watching her former husband move toward another marriage. According to people described as being close to Deborra-Lee, seeing Hugh and Sutton together was reportedly a real kick in the teeth. That short phrase says a lot without needing a long explanation. And the wedding news may not be the most revealing part of what happened because Deborra-Lee had finally decided to speak about what she believed went wrong, the betrayal. For almost 2 years after her separation from Hugh Jackman, Deborra-Lee Furness said very little about what had happened inside their marriage. While the breakup became a major entertainment story, she largely stayed away from public arguments and avoided giving detailed interviews about Hugh or the reasons their relationship ended. That silence made her eventual choice of words much more important. When Deborra-Lee finally addressed the experience more directly, one word stood out above everything else: betrayal. She described the period as a traumatic journey and spoke about a wound that cuts deeply. Those were very different words from the carefully controlled language the couple had used when they first announced their separation. In September 2023, Hugh and Deborra-Lee released a joint statement announcing that their marriage was ending. The statement did not point fingers or explain what had gone wrong. Instead, it described their situation as a change in their journey and said they wanted to pursue individual growth. That wording was calm, respectful, and deliberately limited. There was no public accusation. There was no detailed explanation of who made the decision or why. There was also nothing in the statement that gave the public a clear picture of what had happened privately. Deborra-Lee followed that same approach for a long time. In May 2024, while attending a film event, she was asked about what the previous year had taught her. Rather than discussing Hugh, their marriage, or the reports surrounding their separation, she simply said that she had learned she was strong and resilient. It was a short answer, but it was also revealing. She did not use the opportunity to criticize Hugh. She did not discuss Sutton Foster. She did not confirm or deny the many stories being published about the breakdown of the marriage. Instead, she focused on herself and what she had learned while dealing with a difficult period in her life. That makes her later use of the word betrayal particularly significant. There is a major difference between saying a marriage ended because two people wanted to pursue separate paths and saying that the experience involved betrayal. The first description suggests that a relationship simply reached a point where both people accepted that their lives needed to change. The second suggests that one person felt deeply hurt by the actions or choices of the other. Deborra-Lee did not publicly provide every detail behind that word. She did not give a full timeline of events or make a detailed accusation against Hugh. But choosing the word at all was enough to show that her private understanding of the breakup was much more painful than the neutral language used in the original separation announcement. That distinction is important because there have been reports about Hugh's relationship with Sutton Foster during the Music Man. Various sources have claimed that Hugh and Sutton became extremely close while working together and that an emotional relationship developed before Hugh and Deborra-Lee's separation became public. What it does establish is that she experienced the end of her marriage as something deeply painful. Her decision to remain quiet for so long also matters. Had she immediately given interviews attacking Hugh, her later comments might have been viewed as part of a public battle between two former spouses. Instead, she spent a long period saying almost nothing. That restraint gave her eventual statement a different weight. She had already watched the public debate continue without offering her own detailed version. She had allowed Hugh to continue with his career and had not publicly tried to control how people viewed him. When she finally chose stronger language, she appeared to be speaking after spending considerable time processing what had happened. And if she eventually tells the full story in her own words, we may finally learn what she meant by betrayal and what happened behind the scenes where everything changed. To understand why Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster became such a major part of the story surrounding Hugh's divorce from Deborra-Lee Furness, it is necessary to go back to Broadway. In 2022, Hugh and Sutton were preparing for the revival of The Music Man. The production had already faced major delays because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but rehearsals were finally moving forward for its February 2022 opening. Hugh played Harold Hill, while Sutton played Mary in Peru. Sutton was not simply another actress joining a famous Hollywood star. She was already one of Broadway's most respected performers with multiple Tony Awards and years of experience on the stage. Hugh also had extensive theater experience, so the two had plenty in common professionally. Their working situation was unusually intense. They were not filming a movie for a few weeks and then going their separate ways. They were preparing for a live stage production that required constant rehearsals, performances, press appearances, and travel. Once the show opened, they were performing together night after night. That kind of schedule creates a very close working relationship. The actors have to trust each other, communicate constantly, and develop strong chemistry in front of an audience, and Hugh and Sutton clearly had that chemistry. During interviews around the production, Sutton spoke warmly about her friendship with Hugh. She described the time they spent talking and catching up before performances as one of the best parts of working on T.'s show. Hugh also regularly praised her and shared photographs and videos of their rehearsals. At that point, there was no public confirmation that their relationship was romantic, but later reports changed how people looked back at those moments. Hugh and Sutton had become extremely close while working on The Music Man. Some reports went further, claiming their relationship had become an open secret among people connected to the production. One source later alleged that Deborra-Lee was unaware of the relationship and that she was blindsided when she eventually learned about it. Those claims are important to the story, but they need to be treated carefully. There has been reporting about an alleged emotional affair between Hugh and Sutton, and some sources have made stronger claims about their relationship. However, neither an emotional affair nor a physical affair should be presented as an established fact unless it has been independently confirmed. The people involved have not publicly provided a complete account of what happened during the marriage. What is clear is that the timing became extremely important. In April 2023, Hugh publicly celebrated his anniversary with Deborra-Lee. Just weeks later, the couple appeared together at the Met Gala in May. To the public, they still looked like the same long-married couple people had watched for decades. Then on September 15, 2023, they announced that they were separating after 27 years of marriage. The announcement itself gave little indication of the personal issues that may have been behind the decision. Hugh and Deborra described the change in their lives in respectful terms and said they wanted to pursue individual growth. But once Hugh and Sutton's relationship became public, people naturally started looking back at the timeline. Suddenly, the period surrounding the Music Man received much more attention. The two had spent months working together closely. They had spoken warmly about one another. Hugh and Deborra-Lee had continued making public appearances together. Then the marriage ended. That does not prove that Sutton caused the divorce or that anything inappropriate happened during the marriage, but it explains why the public became so interested in the connection between the Broadway production and the eventual breakup. The story became even more complicated in October 2024. Sutton filed for an uncontested divorce from screenwriter Ted Griffin after nearly 10 years of marriage. Court records confirmed the filing on October 22. The timing immediately drew attention because rumors about Sutton and Hugh had already been circulating. At that point, Hugh and Sutton still had not fully presented themselves as a couple publicly, but reports claimed they were spending significant amounts of time together and had developed a serious relationship. Then came the photographs. By early 2025, Hugh and Sutton were being seen together in public, including photographs of them holding hands. The relationship that had previously been discussed, mainly through anonymous sources, was becoming much harder to describe as simple friendship. That changed the way many people viewed the entire timeline. For Deborra-Lee, the difficult question was not simply whether Hugh had found someone new after their marriage ended. People move on after divorce. The harder question was whether the emotional distance between them had started much earlier than the public separation suggested. That is the question surrounding the Music Man that still refuses to go away. And the next part of the story gets even more personal because Deborra-Lee's own words about what happened were far stronger than the original separation statement. The divorce wasn't as simple. The financial side of Hugh Jackman and Deborra-Lee Furness's divorce tells a more complicated story than the simple idea that two people were married for 27 years, grew apart, and decided to move on. When Deborra-Lee filed for divorce in New York on May 23, 2025, the legal paperwork indicated that the terms had already been worked out and that the case was uncontested. The divorce was granted in June with court records showing a judgment dated June 3. So legally the process moved surprisingly quickly, but that does not mean there was nothing complicated behind the scenes. The couple had spent almost 3 decades building a life together, and during those years Hugh's career had grown from that of a young Australian actor into a global entertainment business. Much of his wealth came from his work as Wolverine in the X-Men franchise. The role made him internationally famous and led to several major films over many years. He also earned substantial income from other movies, Broadway productions, concert performances, endorsements, and business ventures. Real estate was another important part of the picture. Hugh and Deborra owned valuable properties during their marriage, including homes in New York, the Hamptons, and Australia. Their New York property alone had become an extremely valuable asset. In June 2025, reports said their former Manhattan penthouse was being marketed for tens of millions of dollars after the couple had originally purchased it years earlier. That is important.